So the second video in the marketing series talks about how you might find out who those customers are and what their feelings and thoughts are. So this is all about market research. You do market research to find out, as I say, what your customer is thinking, who your customer is, what their behaviour may be, what they're interested in. The more that you can do market research and find this out, the lower your risk in producing a product is. We have here a diagram explaining the process of market research. This ideally should be a circle, cyclical. So you find out what you need, you collect data, you analyse it, you then interpret it, you feed that back, decisions are made, and then ideally that leads to new definitions of new needs and collecting data again, so that you can see whether your initial decision was correct. Key phrases we need. This is probably the chapter with the most technical phrases, but none of them are difficult, and all of them make a lot of sense. So, primary market research is market research that a company does for itself. It will choose what the questions are, it will send people out or send the questions out themselves, and then it will collect that. It's good because it's up to date and it's specific to what you need, but it's obviously expensive, and you may be asking questions to an answer that you want to get. Another option is go for secondary market research, and as the name kind of implies, what you're doing is you're taking someone else's research and you're making your own assumptions on it. You're putting your own ideas over it. Quicker to obtain and a lot cheaper. However, it may be out of date. It may have been collected for a different purpose. And anybody can see that information, including your competitors, so it's not secret. Obviously, there are ways that we can use technology. Forms, Microsoft Forms are very good for collecting information. And next year we'll look a little bit at big data, but the point is that now we're able, in this day and age, to collect thousands or millions of pieces of data from people even without them knowing. And once we've collected that data, a new technique over the last few years is to go through that data and find patterns. So instead of waiting to look for patterns, what you do is you find the data and then you see what patterns you might find. And that's all possible because of the sheer amount of data that we're now collecting. Obviously, we can't ask every single person in the country. So what we have to do is we have to sample, and we have to decide what's a practical sample size. People who we can ask to make the data as reliable as possible, but as timely and within the price that we can afford as possible. New technical term, I would imagine you know this from GCSE maths, but we also have quantitative data. That's where you ask people to give a numerical answer. So it might be how many times a day, or how many minutes of something they do a day, or it may be on a sliding scale, on a scale of 1 to 5. How much are you enjoying my voice right now? So with that type of data, it's very easy to compare the answers, but it doesn't explain to you why certain things are true. Alternatively, quantitative data asks people to give their own personal thoughts. It asks why and how. It may say, why did you buy that product? It tells a lot more about the people, however, it's more expensive to collect, and it's really difficult to collate that information because people often don't give information that can be compared to one another. Market mapping. So what we do in market mapping is we can choose any two axes. So here we've got price versus quality. You can choose in market mapping what your two axes are. And then what we do is we look at all the products on the market similar to ours and where they fit in this market map. By doing this, we find a gap in the market, and that can be the area that we market our own product to. So we can see here that in this there are high quality, high price products and low quality, low price products, but not so many low price, high quality or low quality and high price. Why do you do this? Why do you analyse the market? So what you want to do is you want to see patterns. If you can find a pattern, you can predict what is going to happen following on from this. If you see what people have done in the past, you may be able to tell what will happen in the future. This allows us to forecast the future. What we can do is we can take a look, and we often use a trend line, so we see rather than individual sales, we'll see roughly what's happening. We can see how things have gone recently, and then we can extrapolate what may happen in the future. But of course, extrapolation, whenever we do anything looking at the future, we are really we cannot be certain of the future. So this is one of the downsides of extrapolation. Again, I would consider that you probably have seen this already in your your GCSE maths, looking at the correlation. So when we have two axes, we can see if there is a good correlation, i.e. a link. If it's positive, when one thing changes, increases, the other thing increases. This is a very strong positive correlation. If there is a negative correlation, when one thing increases, another decreases. Or if there is no correlation, there is no link between the two. But be careful. When you see that there is a link, it can be very difficult, and it must be proven which way the link is. For example, as this example says, in hot weather there are greater sales of ice cream. But we have to be careful. We know instinctively that sales of ice cream don't make hotter weather, but there are other situations where the direction of link is not so obvious. It's really important that we understand these links, because then we can again predict how sales will be affected. And really, whether this is useful depends very much on whether the market is fairly stable. Again, all of this is looking at historical data. Now, we're moving on slightly, and we're looking at, when we think about our product, we have to consider, particularly when we look at the marketing mix in a minute, we have to look at the price that we're going to give to our product, or what price whether we should change the price. Now, one of the factors that we need to consider is whether people are less likely to buy our product if we increase the price of that good. So we're talking here about price elasticity of demand, and there is also, that we'll look at later, income elasticity of demand. So with price elasticity of demand, we have the opportunity to decide whether or not to change the price. And there is a formula that we can use to calculate, which is the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. So in price elasticity, we always have a negative elasticity of demand. When we increase the price, the demand will always decrease, except for very unusual situations. So when it's very small change in sales, then it's inelastic. We can change the price and sales don't change. When we change the price and sales change a lot, that is elastic. And we go to less than -1 is inelastic, and more than -1, or more negative value than -1, is elastic. So it means that when we sell goods, we need to decide, if we change the price, will people be put off from buying it? Things can be more elastic. Main reason why there is that there are plenty of alternatives, or what we call substitutes. Okay, so if we change the price and someone can buy almost exactly the same thing cheaper, then they're not going to buy it. That would make our product inelastic. However, one reason for inelasticity is if there are very few substitutes. So with petrol, when we need petrol, we have very few things that we can use to fuel our cars, and particularly for each individual car, there is no substitute from petrol. So we have to buy petrol. So that makes the price inelastic. We have to keep buying it. They can keep pushing the price up, but we have to keep buying it. We can look, on the other hand, at income elasticity of demand, whereas price inelasticity is something we have control over. Income elasticity is something we do not have control over. When the population's income changes, what will happen to the demand of our goods? Usually, when the population's income goes up, then people start buying more of goods. There is one exception to this, and that is inferior goods. And inferior goods are things that, when you have more money, you stop buying. Things like own brand, things like that. In income elasticity, we talk about 3 different types of goods: normal goods, luxury goods, and inferior goods. So normal goods behave as we would expect for income changes. When incomes change, you start buying a little bit more of things. Luxury goods, on the other hand, have an income elasticity of demand of more than +1. So they are very elastic. So that means that when incomes, a population's income goes up a bit, the demand for that good goes up even more than we would expect. And finally, as I mentioned, inferior goods are those goods unusually that have a negative income elasticity of demand. And that means that when a population's income goes up, in fact, demand for these things unusually goes down. Even though we have more money, we want to buy less of that thing because we would move our sales to our normal goods or even perhaps luxury goods instead. Okay, that's the end of talking about market research and talking about elasticity.